Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is the Swirlie from Winder Wonder Works. It weighs 41.4 grams. It's 64 millimeters. Just like this. This is what it looks like in my hand. This is what it looks like next to the tiny hoop. I'm using 1103 10,000 kV pink motors. Cut down Hubsan tri-blades. 6 amp 4-in-1 Racer Star ESC. Emax Femto F3 flight controller. And the CM275T. I have tried the QX70 tri-blades. The Racer Star cut down blades. I have been flying almost exclusively with my LiPo batteries. The Swirlie has been a lot of good fun. I've been really enjoying flying it around, and I have a whole bunch of more flights that will never make the light of day because, you know, I crash. And even the flights you're going to see, I'm going to have some crashes too because that's real world fly. You fly for 3 minutes and you're likely to going to have a crash, or you're just not pushing yourself. But I like to push, and I do have one damage to report near one of my final flights before starting to cut the video. I cracked this little guy right here. So that's something to be aware of, and I think that's likely going to be the weak point, is going to be their 3D printed pieces, and that's just not much we can get away from. But I will say that it does come with a nylon printed piece, and that may absorb some of the shock that you have on impact, so you might not have these breakages with this. But I went with the carbon fiber, and this might not be available when you look to order, because I'm not sure how many production runs he was going to make of this, because this was just an option at the very beginning when I ordered. So I went ahead and got that. I actually got the mixed nuts package, so I have a whole bunch of different kinds of colors for mounting brackets and flight controller brackets, things of that nature. So I was very lucky in that regard, because I saw his Facebook posting and ordered immediately. I wanted to get in on this, and you know, that's kind of my niche. And we'll also, coming up in this video, we have some outside flights, and I was just stunned at how well this flew outside. Now granted, the day I had, the weather was really good. It was overcast, but the weather was really good, and there was nary a breeze. If there was a breeze at all, I would say it was less than 3 miles an hour, and I really couldn't notice it at all. But it flies really well, yeah, indoor and outside, and it's just a lot of fun. And as far as build tips, I don't really have a build tip for you. Doing this little femto flight controller is a lot like doing our other flight controllers, like the Pico BLX or other 20x20 mounting holes. I do wonder if we're going to start to see different sorts of stack designs, because we're really not taking advantage of the size of the femto, because of our ESCs still use 20x20 mounting holes, so we can't necessarily go that much smaller with our center stack, but yet we have these cameras that can go smaller. So I know it's only a few millimeters. I'm wondering if we're going to see even smaller quads come out. I do think I could have dropped some weight if I had used a shorter or a pigtail that was a lower gauge, but I went ahead and left this that was connected to the ESCs. And you know, it probably affects our flight time, which is about 3 minutes on a 300 mAh battery pack, but it's not going to affect it that much. But if you combine maybe losing some weight here, and maybe using some, maybe taking the prop guard off and taking off these other pieces, you know, you can bring the weight down, and you could probably fly even longer and possibly even have more fun. I went with the pink motors for my girls. They'd been asking about a pink quad. I haven't been able to find a pink quad, but I found some pink motors, so I bought those. The batteries that I do mention in the intro, I've been primarily using these. I know these are tough to get, and I feel kind of funny because I continue to recommend these, but I just cannot find batteries in this size that perform any better than these. If you've got a suggestion for me, I'm willing to buy 1 or 2 of them and give them a go, but so far, all the batteries I've tried, this is the top performer. I've also been using the Oversky batteries, and these perform very similarly to these, but I did not fly these outside. So I don't know if it comes to top end speed and straight line runs, if this holds up quite as well as this one does. I flew this only exclusively inside. And shipping from Oversky can take quite some time, so patience will be tested. You could also use these batteries from Venom. We're going to be adding some weight because they've got some. We've got an unneeded connector there. That's probably 1 gram or 2. But when it comes to being able to get something and get something quick, Venom ships here in the U.S., so you might be able to get these fairly quickly, and they're going to be okay. I don't want to say they're bad or subpar. They're just not as good as my lipos. Another battery you might want to look at is the Giant Power. I have not flown this one at all, mainly because these leads are just ridiculously long. There's no way we need leads this long on I don't know what these batteries are made for, but these leads are crazy. So I have not taken the opportunity to shorten these leads to give these a try. But it's another small battery that will work. Its weight is pretty good. They have a 450 mAh battery that I have used, and I've been fairly satisfied with that. And for whatever reason, the 450 has shorter battery leads on it. So something to consider. And let's look at the weight of these while we're here, just so we can get a better idea of batteries. Because when we're talking about a 40 to 45 gram quad, we can't be adding a whole lot of weight and still expect it to fly. We have limited thrust, so we have to keep our battery weight down. This one with the Duralock is 18.7. The Oversky battery, 17.1. The Venom battery, 19.6. And then see if I can get this all wrapped up here. The Giant Power at 18.4. So all those batteries are pretty close as far as their weight goes. The other thing you want to consider when you're flying is if you put a big battery underneath here, that your props are going to be pushing down on that battery. So that's going to decrease your thrust as well. And you can see my favorite battery here. It does stick out on both ends, whereas with this Oversky, it sticks out very, very little. It almost hides underneath that one arm there. So something to consider when you get in your batteries. Dimensions and weight will affect your flight performance. And as I mentioned in the video, I also attempted to use these. I didn't like them at all. I thought they introduced vibrations. I was having a difficult time tuning. These are the cut down Racer Stars, and these are the QX70 props, which we should have known the QX70 props weren't going to be any good. I haven't tried, but I want to try the Furious props. These will slide down on these 1103 motors. I might have to drill them out a tiny bit. But that's one other thing about this kit, is it does come with a drill bit. So you will be able to drill out your own props if you choose to do that. The kit only comes with a drill bit, so you're going to need something to handle it with. Of course, you can use a pair of pliers or something, but you can pick this little hand drill up off of Amazon for relatively cheap. I think it was around $10. And I'll link that down below, and I'll also link to all the parts that it took to build this little vehicle down in the description down below. So if you're interested, you can click those links and find out the cost of the parts. We should mention that there's also another prop that I would like to try. The Furious props, you can cut those down and try those. I've stayed away from them just because they're expensive and I don't want to cut them down and ruin them, which I have a habit of doing. I had a whole bunch of these Hubsan props around, and these Hubsan props, I went to those because they were used on the Furby F90, and that performed pretty well for a 2S brush motor quad that was 90 millimeters, and that's why I decided to go with these. And I was pretty happy with how it flew, so I didn't start chopping down a bunch of props and in my case ruining a bunch of props. I think if you want to get into experimenting a little bit more, another prop you might want to investigate is the HQ 30x30. It's a black prop. Let me see if I have one. Here it is. So take this prop and it will slide down on these 1103 motors. It's kind of that T-mounted, and it's not a 30x30, it's 30x20, although that pitch looks a lot more, I believe that's a lot more than 20 degrees. Anyways, it's printed on there 3x2, and then chop these down. With these wide paddles, we might be able to get even more thrust, and more thrust is going to increase your stability for inside flight, and also your speed and your ability to pop up and over things. Something that I should mention that I'm starting to see, and I think it's probably something we're going to see across all these different indoor brushless or guarded brushless. And if you haven't seen the others that I've done on the channel, I'll put a link to the playlist. We've got the Hoverbot, and we've got the Swift, and we've got several others. I've done about 5 or 6 different of these, same sort of category. And in fast forward flight, when you kind of come around something, like outside in the trees is when I noticed when I come around the tree that all of a sudden it would pitch back. And in this particular case, I'm not sure why that is. With the Mosquito, we took the prop guard off, and that made the problem go away. In this particular case, I didn't have an opportunity to fly without the prop guard to see if it was just the prop guard that was causing a disturbance in the airflow, or if maybe we're coming, because I noticed it when I would be nose down and coming around something, that maybe we just lack the RPMs or thrust from the rear motors to be able to catch up in order to keep the quad at the angle, because it would pitch up. And you won't see that in the outside video. The video that I've selected, I think I just kind of tend to understand how to fly around that, and so therefore you don't see that actually coming up in the video. But you should see it in a box right up here. So it's something to be aware of. I don't think it's specific to this by any stretch, because again, we saw it in the Mosquito. I've seen it in the Aurora 90, which will be coming up on the channel. Here it is. And I think that's just something that we have to be aware of when we're trying to get so small and we're using these guards, that it might be disturbing the airflow underneath, making it difficult to maintain its position all the time in flight. But it doesn't happen very often, as you can see with the upcoming outside flight. That in that flight, it doesn't happen at all because I don't trigger it. And again, I think I figure out how to fly around it. I just kind of adapt to it. And I think that's something as pilots that we tend to do. We find a flaw and then we start to avoid it. So that's the last thing I think you should be aware of. Coming up, we have the full build blog of this, and hopefully that is beneficial and enjoyment to a few of you. And then we'll follow it up with the outside flights. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the section down below. Thanks for watching. We've got our kit contents out here for the Swirlie. And not everything that I ordered is out, because I went for the, what is it called, the mixed nuts, which means I got several different color schemes. And when I bought, I just decided I didn't know what I wanted to use, so I just got the mixed nuts, so I got all these different color options. It's odd that we get the black pieces to hold the prop guard, but we don't get any black pieces for holding the other components. But anyways, I'm going to go with green, and I'm going to combine that with some hot pink 10,000 kV 1103 Racer Star motors. And I've got my 6 amp 4-in-1 ESC. The kit does come with this lead. I won't be using it. I prefer to use silicone wire. This is not silicone wire. It's relatively stiff. I couldn't tell you exactly what gauge it is because it doesn't seem to be printed on this wire. If it is, I just can't read it with my old eyes. There's some printing here, but I can't read it. So I'm going to use my own JST lead, and I'll probably just put it right here off the ESC, so no worries there. It also comes with this battery strap, which I'm not going to use, as it states here in the instructions. You need to cut this down to 1/2 inch, and you can use an X-Acto to do that. I have got one that I can already use right here, and so we're just going to use that one. What's the last piece? Oh yes, this appears in the videos, and I think it's great. Apparently this is the mascot he uses for the Wonderworks. I think it's pretty funny. Go watch his videos. If I can, I'll link his video up here. He does kind of a, it's almost like a sketch where he has this crayon on a tongue depressor, and he goes rah, 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 rah. Anyways, it's funny. Also in the kit, we get a color printout for the Femto, which is nice. It's a nice touch, so we don't have to look it up online. We got it right here at the desk. Also, there's a picture tutorial on how to build this at the shortcrayon.com. And I'll link that in the description down below. Okay, the first bit, we got to get out some of our 3D printed pieces here. And this goes on the bottom. And we get in our nylon standoff kit here with a little baggie. Oh yeah, it also comes with a drill bit. I believe this is 1.45 millimeters, so you can drill out props, so that's actually quite handy. I have this drill bit already, but in case you don't, it's very good that's in there. Next bit here are 2 little pieces to go around our, come on baggie, go around our strap. These little guys go right down here like this. I wonder if we're gonna have to screw these on. Does look like we're gonna have to screw those on. Let me get a tool. So this doesn't necessarily have to be here right now, but that's how the pictures show it. Now this flat edge goes towards the outside, and this will probably fall apart on me as I try to get it started. Note these are straight screws, they're not Phillips headed. If you find you have a hard time getting these threaded on because they are very, very tight fitting, just take a Phillips head screwdriver and just kind of ream them out. You can see you get some little shavings off of there. That will help us get down in there and get the threads started. There we go. And it's pretty tight, so it gets a little bit tender on the fingers. I would prefer that these were Phillips headed, but we work with what we get, right? So go ahead and thread these on, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Now we can just take our 4-in-1 ESC. I've already taken the plastic off. We can just slide it down here, and then next piece we have these arms, and you can see how they're kind of more standoff. How this bar is on the inside, we want that to slide just directly down on here, and then we do the same for this one. So then it lines up just like that. So we have our battery strap and our ESCs in place. Now let's put some motors on. I've mounted all the motors up, and I've trimmed my motor wires, and I've also tinned them up, and I've tinned up the pads on the ESC. Now we just need to connect up our motors. This will be the tail. We are going to have to rotate our flight controller 45 degrees in order to make this thing fly nose first, and we'll need motors 2 and 3 to spin in the counterclockwise direction, so we can either cross any 2 wires or we can reverse those in the BL Heli app or suite. So let's go ahead and let's do this one right here, and you can see the motor wires for these 2 motors. They go underneath these standoffs that are 3D printed, and I've tried to line up these so I know which wire is which rather than just going by chance, and I've used my blue tack to keep everything in place so it doesn't float around on me. So I'm going to give this a little bend here. I might have too much hanging out. Okay, that felt pretty good. This is the middle wire, so I'm going to go to the next wire, which is, I believe this is an outside wire. Yes. So this one will be next. Get that counterclockwise rotation. Well, that wire does not want to bend down for me, does it? There we go. And the final wire here. Oh, we're hooked on something down here on one of the little FETs. And I've gotten a little bit better at being able to strip these wires. It's just kind of a feel thing using the fingernail clippers, and it goes a lot faster for me now. But of course, what is this, my 5th build with these tiny little wires? Okay, so there's the first one. Did I give those a pull test? Let me try that again. That's good. That's good. That's good. Alright, so do the others. Remember, if you want to get the counterclockwise rotation with these particular motors, we need to reverse any 2 wires like I did here on motors 2 and 3. These can go straight through, which is nice because they're right next to where we need them. We're all wired up here. You can see how I've got all my wires routed. Hopefully that's clear to you. And we're ready for the flight controller, and here it is. This is the Emax Femto, and it is tiny, tiny, tiny. And next to it, I've got a clone, but it's a 20 by 20 mounting hole board. And just to give you some size comparisons, that Femto is really small. So this goes inside this little holder, and you can see we've got some edges all the way around, and this is flexible stuff, so we just kind of have to manipulate it down in there. And there's a cutout edge right along here. That's where our USB port goes. So I'll just work it down in there. Now that gives it the same mounting options as this one. But you can also see we don't use the space in between, so that's probably critical. Show it this way. Okay, so enough about that. And this will be our tail. So this would typically go on about like this, and then we do 45 degrees so that we're flying this way. Now, this is going to be difficult for me to try to do any sort of video, but what we're going to do is we're going to wire in our flight controller. And we've got our lead here, and because this is an all-in-one board, we can just take our black and our red and go directly to the battery pads, which are right here. So we've got the minus and the plus, and we'll do that from the underneath side. And then these are our signal wires for our ESCs. Let me see if I can get this focused. Focus camera. Okay, you see those numbers 4, 3, 2, 1. Those are our signal wires, and they correspond to what we have down here. And so this plugs in like this. Actually, it goes in there sideways like this. So this would be the number 4 slot, which on the sticker on the ESC is right here. So these don't necessarily correlate to our motor numbers. These are just the ESC layouts. So we have to make sure we get these wires connected to the right signal layout on our Femto in order to get the right control. And what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and wire this all up, and then we'll come back and take a closer look at it. I'll make sure it works, and we'll take a closer look at it so that you can see which color goes to which signal pad. I think that's the best way I can make that clear, because working on this tiny little board, it won't take much for a finger or my soldering iron or anything get in there where you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing anyways. So we'll take a look at this after we get it wired up. You see I've got everything wired, and before we look at the wiring for the 4-way ESC, I wanted to show you this. Sometimes on these micro motors, they're really hard to tell which way they're spinning when you're doing your motor tests through Betaflight or ClingFlight. When you're on the motors tab and you move the sliders up and down. So what I do, some days I can feel it, some days I can't. So what I do is I've just put some tape on the motor stems, and that helps me identify which way the motor is spinning by which way the flap is, which side of the flap is hitting my finger. So that tip might come in handy for a few of you. Okay, so they send us this really nice sheet, and we can tell where everything is wired up, and that's really nice. And they've actually even got some instructions over here on the other side. So if we take a closer look at this, we can tell which signal wires go where. and I'm going to try to rotate this board a little bit. So we've got the orange wire, which is down here to ESC1, and then ESC2 is the blue wire. Then over here at ESC4 is our yellow wire, and then down there at ESC3 is the green wire. So if you have a Racer Star 6 amp ESC, you should be able to wire it just like the color coding I've got here, and it should work just fine. Alright, the next bit is going to be the receiver, and I am going to attempt to use this little tiny thing here, and the instructions on the website have us putting the receiver down in here and then running our antenna wire up through the hole of one of these open holes that we see here, which will work just fine. Also, if you wanted to look at something else, a little bigger receiver, I did some dry fitting, and if we put our camera mount, we could also put a receiver right back in here a little bit. Matter of fact, this one would fit back there too. But if you needed to, you could just mount it to the back of your camera or something of that nature. But here's a side shot. Let me see if I can get that. That motor gets right in the way. There is pretty good space down in there. We should be able to get most of the micro receivers that we have available to us down in there. And you will need to get a USB right angle adapter like this one. See how it's flat up here? And that will plug in neatly right in here. And in this particular case, we even have a little extra motor clearance. We haven't always had that, but we have a smaller flight controller, so we have a little bit better clearance there. And you can see this is the one I shaved down for previous builds. I'm going to do some haggling with this little receiver, see if I can't get it working, and then we'll come back and we'll wire up our VTX and take it for a test spin. We're getting so close now. Okay, for the life of me, I could not get this thing to work. I could make it bind one time, and then if I disconnected power and brought power back again, I had to bind again and again and again. So, not going to use this ever. Alright, so here we have a look at kind of our final assembly, and I went back to one of my good old Spectrum satellites. It's down in there. Hopefully you can get a little bit of a view of it. There is plenty of space down there. It's a little bit tight in this dimension, but I was able to get it down, and then because my wires are a little bit out here in peril, I went ahead and added a kind of a mess of hot glue and then a dab of hot glue over here to keep my antennas. Not ideal. Typically you'd want these sticking out in different ways. These wires, they suggest to go through these little holes up here, which you can do with smaller wires, but these ones, they don't fit. So I had to find an alternate method. That's just kind of how we have to go sometimes, right? Now we're getting real close. We just need to mount up our VTX and camera here, our all-in-one unit, and that'll go on here just like this. But you see I've got a couple nuts on here holding this down, and there are two sets of nuts, or there's actually a couple sets of nuts. One set will fit these standoffs, one set will not. There's actually some M3s in here, and that is for our prop guard when we put that on. So you got two different sets in there, keep them straight. And you also see we have a little bit of a unique camera design. We have this little strap that runs over the top of our camera, and that's pretty cool. I like the fact that it goes down in there, but it does take some finagling to get in there. Just kind of go easy, kind of bend and flex where you need to get it seated down in the camera. Don't get too rough or you might break that top piece. We're going to get our 5 volt from right here. This is typically where you would use another receiver, but we've got that wired up on the bottom. Try not to get it too hot, or that wire underneath might come loose, and then you got to start that again. And then we'll go to ground right down here. So that's nice and handy for this, our placement. So if we do this, and we come around over here, cut it down to about there, that should be pretty good. Strip these little wires down. 1, 2. There we go. Now I'm going to take these nuts off. Now they say to put our nuts on all the way. I kind of was surprised by that, because we've only got one set. Let's take a look at this. I might be missing a set in my kit. Oh, that's why we need nuts. The USB port. So we need to add a little bit of a spacer in there. I wonder if just one set of nuts is going to be enough though. says to use a spacer or a nut. Well, I don't recall us getting any spacers. Do a little dry fit here. I don't know if that's going to be enough either. Actually, with one nut, it sits flush right down on top. It seems kind of high for our props. Well, let's proceed. I'm going to put those other 2 nuts on. I have to go find some more when it gets tight. So then one of these. I have to take all this off. Use right now. This stuff will sit down there. Nice and here. If I can fit this camera in through there. No, I have to figure out any pictures. I'll put this side up. Here we are in our final assembled state. I've even got props on. Take a little spin around this. I used some nylon spacers that I had on hand down here because my kit only came with 1 set of nuts and I needed those for the top. So you can also see, let's see if I can line that up just so, how the outer edges of the frame where it connects bow out. Hopefully you can see that. So it seems like the center stack is a little higher, or we need some standoffs here that are a little bit taller, maybe just a couple of mil to make that flat. It shouldn't be much of a big deal because it is over the top of the props. It's really not really going to be getting in the way of the prop spinning or anything like that. But it looks pretty sharp and it's awful tiny. Let's compare it to the classic. So there we go. There's our original tiny hoop. Here's our new one. And the motor dimensions should be just about the same. But with bigger props. I'm not a fan of these props. I'm going to do some experimenting with some other props. I've already started to cut down a few others. But there you go. That's the build. We should have one more flight to take a look at now.